Good morning, everyone. TGIF. Thank goodness it's Friday. For you guys who are working hybrid, I know you're absolutely thrilled that you're working from home. Or maybe you did it Tuesday and Thursday and you're just absolutely regretting the days that you've chosen and you hate it. But nonetheless, it's Friday, so reparations. This is Reparations Week here on Financial Literacy 101. Very important. Now, with my first segments on Monday and Wednesday, we talked about how we use certain terminologies to pretty much keep putting the foot on the powers that be, to let them know we're not going anywhere, and to constantly remind them what they owe to the Foundation of Black American U.S. Free Me community. But today, the terminology of pulling oneself up by their own bootstrap has gone too far. It's absolutely gone too far, family. And it's really unclear why the understanding of pull yourself up by the bootstrap has shifted from absurd to accessible, because no one lift themselves up by their own bootstraps. Everyone always has assistance, support in some form of matter. No one can do anything essentially by themselves, especially in modern day times. Ever since the 19th century, someone's always had some assistance of some kind. But we understand that in our history that a lot of our wealth have been taken away by all sorts of nonsensical violence. Not just the system of white supremacy that essentially runs the world, but also the U.S. government. Is everyone in the U.S. government a white supremacist? No, I'm not saying that. But we need to stay focused here, family, as I get into this, because this is going to be important today. I really want to point out some important things here as I'm getting still set up. But I just really want you to define whatever you think the term is. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I want you to really define that term and then tell me, how can one do so by themselves? Tell me, how can you do that? Because as I look at it, even if you were trying to get a business loan, you still need a loan, and that's from somewhere else. That means you're not pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. Oh, well, I need to get a job to save up money. You still need someone to provide employment in order for you to get income, in order for you to pull yourself up. Does that make any sense? See, this is a very fraudulent terminology that people use, especially talking to Black Americans. I mean, all sorts of people. People who may look like you and I from different countries. People who do not look like you and I from different countries. Will say, well, I came over here with $5 in my pocket. You know, my great grandfather came over here. No. Everyone has had assistance and support in some way. I'm just tired of this terminology being used incorrectly. But at the same time, family has to do with reparations. Because that's what we're talking about here today. So let's get into it. While the phrase pull yourself up by your bootstrap is nonsense, and it states here that pull yourself up by your bootstraps is a common phrase in American political discourse, particularly present in conservative rhetoric about self-reliance. And we know this is mostly directed and aimed at foundational Black Americans, aka U.S. freedmen. The concept is simple. To pull yourself up by your bootstraps means to succeed or elevate yourself without any outside help. That means that you provide your own job. You don't get a business loan of any sort. You're not employed anywhere. How do you get commerce? How do you get currency? How do you get money in order to even start your own business? Oh, well, my family passed money down. Well, how do they get their money? See, in an economy, Everybody is supporting on one another in order to raise and make money within that economy. It says this, but when you examine this expression and its current meaning, it doesn't seem to make much sense. To pull yourself up by your bootstraps is actually physically impossible. In fact, the original meaning of the phrase was more along the lines of try to do something completely absurd. Exactly. So I could get into what this is all about, but I won't. I'm gonna go right into Black Americans have always, using that particular terminology, have always tried to use one another within our own community to pull ourselves up, quote unquote, cliche, by our bootstraps. And every single time we have done so, in the system of white supremacy, they have literally knocked the legs from under the table and we fall. And we continue to fall. And we continue to fail. Especially during those times of the Black codes and Jim Crow laws. So we're gonna take a walk down memory lane, so to speak, and then we're gonna bring it to even present day of how the system of white supremacy, how federal, state, and local government still continue to rob us of the foundation and the economies within our own communities of us trying to build. Reparations. I'm gonna keep saying reparations intermittently, so like, why do you need to say reparations? I'm just gonna keep saying reparations out of nowhere because I want you to get what I'm getting at. The Rosewood Massacre was an attack on the predominantly African-American town of Rosewood, Florida in 1923 by large groups of white aggressors. The town was entirely destroyed. The town was entirely destroyed by the end of the violence. And the residents were driven out permanently. They were taken from their homes and the town was destroyed. So what occurred here, their land was taken and their homes were destroyed and they was driven out their own town. The story was mostly forgotten until the 1980s when it was revived and brought to public attention. Now, what a lot of people don't understand about Rosewood, and like many other small Black towns, because you'll hear people from a different melanation percentage, and I'm mostly talking about white Anglo-Saxons, and this is not all inclusive to all white people, so don't take it there. What I'm getting at is, family, they will tell you to go back to your country like all Black people in America are from Africa. Well, last time I checked, I thought that everyone was essentially from Africa. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then we go a little bit further, our roots, our descendants, and our ancestors essentially was on this land. See, back in those days, they would like to call them American Indians, and then what we would know of today are Native Americans. They had two different types of looks. Believe it or not, some of the first original American Indians looked like you and I. And then you have the Native Americans who look kind of like the Mongolian, red tinted, Asian looking people that are so-called who we are today. Then of course you have to add into your $5 Indians, right? And those are basically white people at the time who would pay $5 to get on the Indian strolls. I'm not gonna go too deep there, but I want to give you some background so you understand exactly where I'm coming from. But nonetheless, our ancestors and forefathers built this country. We were here long before 1619, and we were actually here even before the foundation of Black American year of 1526. There were already Black people here when the Spanish conquistadors tried to bring 100 slaves here in 1526. They said there was already dark melanated people on the land, Aboriginals. So that's what we first need to understand, how long we stem in this country. So the next time some random person, no matter where they're from, Asia or Europe, tell you to go back to your country, you tell them to go back to their country because their ancestors and forefathers are from Europe and Asia or Eurasia, however you want to call it, however you want to, terminology you want to put it in. So I'm tired of these slogans. I'm tired of these phrases of go back to your country, pull yourself out from your bootstraps, black on black crime, all of these things that demonize the black community. Where we forget essentially what happened. By the 1920s, Rosewood population of about 200 was entirely made up of black citizens, except for one white family that ran the general store. Those probably the safest white people in that area, I assure you. The incident was reported to Sheriff Robin Ellis Walker with Taylor, specifying that she had not been raped. So a white lady in this town said that some black guy assaulted her, but she said she has not been raped. Fannie Taylor's husband, James Taylor, a foreman at the local mill, escalated the situation by gathering an angry mob of white citizens to hunt down the culprit. He also called up from white residents in neighboring counties, among them a group of 500 KKK members who were in Gainesville for a rally. The white mob prowled the area woods searching for any black man they could find. And I'm not going to bore you essentially what happened. We know what occurred in Rosewood. Random people were getting killed, hung, burned, maimed, and all other sorts of things, family. Pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And you can go here on history.com and read this for yourself, but I wanted just to show you there's also a movie that John Singleton made back in 1997 that you guys can view. But I would like you to read the story. It's more graphic and detailed than actually watching the movie. But the movie is also a good depiction as well. But the one other thing I didn't really want to point out, but I'm going to mention here, is the Red Summer of 1919. And we have to understand that the Red Summer also deals in conjunction of the other Black Wall Street. See, I don't like when Foundation of Black Americans, we tout and beat the drum on one Black Wall Street, which was Tulsa, Oklahoma, that got decimated in 1921. No, family, we had other Black Wall Streets as well. We just wasn't doing good in one city, in one town, in one district. We were doing good across the nation. And matter of fact, this is what I'll do for you guys. I'll just go ahead and look up those other Black Wall Streets. Give me 1 second. And we won't go too in depth with this one, but I just want to show you, in case some of you are not familiar with the other Black Wall Streets. And we're just going to run down the list here. This story is coming from The Root. Shout out Professor Black Truth. So this one is titled The Other Black Wall Streets. And I'm just going to give a quick rundown of all these neighborhoods that were part of the other Black Wall Streets that you may not have heard of yet. The Haiti Community Dorm, North Carolina. W. Du Bois wrote some excerpt on that. Jackson Ward, Richmond, Virginia. Okay, you can go and read this for yourself as well. The 4th Avenue District in Birmingham, Alabama. Again, I'm showing you all the other Black Wall Streets that you may not have known of. Boulay, Oklahoma. That was also, don't forget about Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's what we're referencing, okay? So that's a very short list, but there were other ones. And most of the major cities, okay? Most of the major cities where Black people were, it was either a Black business district or a Black Wall Street. They were interchangeable names that they used on that time. But see, what we need to understand, family, we were doing financially and economically well during these times. And again, quote unquote, we pulled ourselves up, cliche, with our bootstraps. So let me give you some background here of, first and foremost, we never received reparations. This is reparations week. We've never received reparations. That's number one. Two, we have historical history and evidence of us always using one another to support ourselves in the Black community and quote unquote, pulling ourselves up by our bootstrap. Reparations. It says here that the ink had barely dried on the treaties of Versailles, which formally ended World War I, when the recently returned Black veterans grabbed their guns and stationed themselves on rooftops in Black neighborhoods in Washington, D.C., my hometown, prepared to act as snipers in the case of mob violence in July of 1919. Others set up blockades around Howard University, a Black intellectual hub. creating a perspective ring around residents. Now I'm gonna skip down because the story is very long, but I'm gonna give you the meat and potatoes of how Black people have always been doing predominantly well until the system of white supremacy comes in and decimate, destroy with chaos and maiming and kill and lynching all of our people. I'm going somewhere, family, because we continue to do the same things over and over again. During the summer, during the Red Summer, massive anxiety became mass violence between April and November of 1919. There would be approximately 25 riots, an instance of mob violence. Family, do you understand? These 25 riots were led by white lynch mobs. And we're going to get into what these 25 riots actually did to the Black community. See, you don't even have to factor in slavery. You don't even have to factor in Jim Crow. You can just factor in the Red Summer alone. We don't have to factor in redlining and gentrification. We can just go back to the summer of the Red Summer of 1919. You will understand why the Black American family are in some of the same conditions that we are in today. Because we continue to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and the system of white supremacy continues to take our boots from us. It's kind of like when people get incarcerated, they take your shoestrings. So now you can't even tie up your boot. So it says here, the instance of mob violence, 97 recorded lynchings, and a 3-day-long massacre in Lane, Arkansas, during which over 200 Black men, women, and children were killed after Black sharecroppers tried to organize. Black sharecroppers tried to organize for better working conditions, and they thought that was a threat against white society. So they gathered up lynch mobs to go and kill 200 Black people, including our own children, what they're still doing today with these race soldiers on the street. So what occurring today has also occurred in the 1920s, also in the 1800s, also in the 1700s and 1600s, as well as the 1500s in this country. We got the history and we have the evidence. They said when sharecroppers tried to organize for better working conditions, the KKK, which had been largely shut down by the government after the Civil War, experienced a resurgence in popularity, began carrying out dozens of lynchings across the South. There's more. White children cheer outside of Black American residents that they set on fire in September of 1919. And if you look at the House family, the house looked very well until they destroyed the house. And these are the children of white supremacy. We're not going to read everything here, but we are going to highlight a lot of these things. It states here, Black people, ad hoc self-defense organizations try to keep white folks from terrorizing their communities. But we're the problem. We are inherently violent. Are we Black people? Are we inherently violent where Black people had to form self-defense organizations trying to keep white folks from terrorizing their communities? We wasn't going to their communities and try to terrorize them and burn their homes. See, it really doesn't matter if you move into a white neighborhood. It doesn't matter if you move into a Black neighborhood. They will still come where you are and terrorize you. Now, the modern day white citizen doesn't come to Black neighborhoods, but those race soldiers do, and they come to terrorize. It says here it's occupied territory, police in Black Chicago from Red Summer to Black Power. I'm gonna move on because I have a lot to cover here. President Wilson leading the parade of the Capitol's returning veterans in February 1919, he did not take any action once the violence towards Black veterans broke out late that year. Oh, isn't that a surprise? No, it isn't. Now, there's a lot to unpack here, family. You're going to read this for yourself. Again, this is on history.com. The only thing you need to look up is the Red Summer, okay? So I have some highlighted areas here that I'm about to go over to bring you some context. This is another picture Crowds gathered by the 29th Street Bridge in Chicago after the drowning death of Eugene Williams, a Black American teenager who had crossed an imaginary boundary in the water separating blacks from whites on July 27, 1919. He crossed an imaginary line that separated, in the water, okay, in the water that separated blacks from whites. Let's move on. By the end, 15 white people and 23 black people would be dead. Over 500 people would be injured. And again, all of this is happening in the black community, in the black neighborhood, not in others. Over 1,000, listen to this, family, over 1,000 black families would be homeless after their homes were burned down. In the response to the protests, armed white men jumped in cars and tore through the city streets, firing into black homes and businesses. A white mob marched down the street, assaulting black pedestrians and torching black homes. Have you noticed it continues to state that it continues to burn down black homes, and black families became homeless? Have you noticed the constant trend of this occurring? See, people, we are so inundated with the truth that a lot of these stories go unnoticed. They are forgotten. We have to understand the conditions of how we got there. A lot of people look at the branches of the tree. I want you to look at the root of the tree. How did it start? Where did it begin? And I'm not telling you to focus there. I'm just telling you these need to know. And then there's a timeline, there's a trend, there's a succession of steps that you can potentially follow to understand your current conditions today. Let me move on. In the two previous years, white supremacists have bombed over 25 black homes in an effort to keep black people out of the city. The police never intervened. Again, I tell you, prominent black communities are over-policed, okay? Because they want to attack you where you're doing the most prominent. And then those places where those ghettos that actually has crime, they're under-policed, but with police brutality. Because how can these things keep occurring when you have all this police presence, but essentially we still have some of these same issues in our neighborhood? And I wonder how crack cocaine got there. That's another topic for another day, because we know one of those three-letter agencies helped that out. Veterans in Chicago formed militia to defend black home neighborhoods and families when the police and government refused. Once again, the federal government was complicit because, as I said before, President Wilson at the time took no action. He knew what was going on in Washington, D.C., aka that's where the White House and the Capitol is, but he took no action in helping those black veterans as white lynch mobs were going across, killing and hanging them. This is the red summer of 1919, where 25 race riots broke out. Pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And the one consistent thing that you see, family, as I'm showing this, is they continue to burn and destroy black homes and kill black people. Let me move on. In a riot in South Carolina, one preacher reportedly said of the black self-defense units, the males carried their guns with as much calmness as they were going to shoot a ravening hunt or getting ready to shoot the Kaiser soldiers. Let me move on. As bloodshed spread nationally to South Carolina, Nebraska, Florida, Ohio, among others, veterans continue to be targeted. At least 13 veterans were lynched across the United States after the war. There's more. World War I was very much a broken promise for basically all black Americans. But the people who felt the brokenness of that promise most acutely were the veterans. Family. Reconstruction to just after World War II, thousands of black veterans were assaulted, threatened, abused, or lynched following military service. So essentially, it does not matter if you serve this country or not, you will still be treated like an animal. You will still be treated like a criminal. They will still take and destroy whatever you have. It does not matter. That's all you're getting from this. Despite the events of the Red Summer, 1.2 million Black men would enlist in World War II. Wow. 2 years later, we will see one of the worst instances of racial violence in American history, the Tulsa Race Massacre. See, people forget about the Red Summer of 1919. People forget about Rosewood. And the only one we would kind of like trump up is the Tulsa Race Massacre, correct? No, family. It's a large history of white supremacy destroying and killing our towns by hook or by crook. They always use some excuse like, oh, a white lady got assaulted, or a white lady got raped. And it always comes back to be what? Untrue. The Tulsa Race Massacre, during which a white mob attacked residents, homes, and businesses in the predominantly Black Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa, which was what? The Black Wall Street, even though I showed you guys the other Black Wall Street. But it was the Black Wall Street at the time. News reports were largely squelched, despite the fact that up to 300 people were killed and thousands left homeless. Again, the constant thing you see, family, is that we continue to be homeless after any riot, after any massacre. They continue to take our homes and burn everything that we have. And we'll say, oh, there's no Black neighborhoods, there's no Black communities. All of our Black neighborhoods and communities are projects in the hood. Well, family, when we had homes, they destroyed our homes. Let me tell you something. You ever been to the beach and you built a sand castle or some sort of sand structure? And every time you build it, somebody comes and run right through it. That is our history in this country. But this is our country. And they did essentially all these things to push us out. But our ancestors and forefathers stayed here and fought and bled and cried because they understand that this is our land and why move us from it. So that brings me to present day. That brings me to present day reparations. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Well, let's talk about the small town of Mason, Tennessee. This small town is only roughly around 2 square miles. As you can see, it's a very, very small town. And even to give you a better depiction of Mason, Tennessee, look how small this town is. Can you see the outline, family? They have a couple of churches. They have a detention center. I mean, you got a detention center in a small Black town. You have a corner store there, and you have a park. But if you notice, they have all this open land. This is Mason, Tennessee. Population is around 1,600. The land mass is around 2 square miles. I mean, you could literally run around the town of Mason and do 2 miles, essentially. But once again, family, in the system of white supremacy, they found out a way to knock the legs off the table. Tennessee comptroller tries to take over Black town ahead of forward investment. Pull ourselves up from our own bootstraps, right? Pull ourselves up from our own bootstraps, and yet again, the system of white supremacy tries to steal, kill, and destroy anything when it benefits Black people. It doesn't matter where you are. You're just in a small little town that's predominantly Black. And you didn't pay no attention to this damn town until Ford was going to invest over $1 billion by building an electric car facility. Now you want to pay attention to the Mason, Tennessee, right? Let's get into the story, family. Oh yeah. Last week, Tennessee Comptroller Jason Mumpower issued a highly unusual appeal to residents of the small but majority Black town of Mason, which occupies fewer than 2 square miles in rural West Tennessee. Mumpower, the white Tennessee governor, comptroller, excuse me, stating, in my opinion, it's time for Mason to relinquish its charter. Wow. What a coincidence, family, that you now want this majority Black town to relinquish its charter. Give up control and give it to the state, because now Ford is going to invest over $1 billion inside of the small town by building an electric car facility that's going to bring 27,000 jobs. 27,000 jobs, family. Let me just go over something very briefly. When we're talking about Ford investing $1 billion in building a facility to build these electric cars, and they're going to start pumping out cars in 2025, and what it's going to actually do to this ran down, broken down city. And we're going to get into how this city was once white ran, and once they ran this city into the ground, they tucked tail and left. Oh, matter of fact, a lot of them got relieved because of all of the fraudulent activity that the people in place were white was essentially still squelching and stealing the funds from the city. But when we're talking about an investment on the magnitude of Ford bringing in electric cars, this city, they know the future of Mason, Tennessee. Mason, Tennessee will be a tech city. Now, some of the things when large investment groups come into small towns as this, just like the military will roll into small towns, and you notice these towns start to get built up because of all the money that's being pumped in, all the jobs are being pumped in. It increases your roadways, your railway system, your tunnels and your bridges, your mass transit. Everything, your whole entire infrastructure is going to be built up. We're talking about energy grids, your national power grids, telephone grids, 5G, reservoirs, pumping station, maybe a port nearby, airport nearby, waterways, canals, all sorts of things. What does these things help? When you invest in someone's town, your infrastructure actually becomes a lot better. And what are some of the things that actually will help the people, the majority Black town of Mason, Tennessee? What are some of the things they're going to benefit from? They're going to benefit from better health services, hospital, clinics, emergency response systems, education, school, colleges, university, other adult facilities, sanitation, waste removal, you name it, they're going to have it. Mason, Tennessee will become a tech city, and this white Tennessee comptroller, Munpower, is trying to essentially kill the nanny on it. Let's get into it, family. It says here that Mason is 60% Black and includes descendants of men, women, and children enslaved in the area before emancipation. So some of these people who are living there are the descendants of people who were actually enslaved in that very same town. Munpower cites a 20-year history of fiscal mismanagement. Listen to this, because we understand that white supremacy likes to take both sides of the argument, correct? So Munpower, the comptroller, like, yeah, the city funds, this town's fund has been mismanaged, and the people in charge are Black people. Well, let's provide a little more clarity than that. Munpower cites a 20-year history of fiscal management, including 2 major fraud investigations that resulted in criminal indictments and recurring delays in annual audits as the green light needed for town upheaval. It says between 2004 and 2016, Mason's financials under white leadership, can we see that, man? I'm gonna blow that up. Between 2004 and 2016, Mason's financials under white leadership were described as unauditable, yet had no appeals in it. It means that the financial was so jacked up, they did so much fraudulent activities, they couldn't even been audited. They wasn't keeping records. They don't even know what was going on. They just know that the town was in debt. Now, Vice Mayor Rivers admits the modest town of Mason is in a deep hole after inheriting $500,000 in debt. It says here that the current administration has made tangible financial recovery so much so that Mason expects to be financially caught up by year's end. Now, the Tennessee Comptroller, Mumpower, he understands that Ford Motor Company, 4,100-acre electric truck and battery plant, landed by state officials last year with nearly $1 billion in taxpayer incentives. $1 billion in taxpayer incentives. The operation is expected to generate 27,000 new jobs and $22 million annually in state taxes after its planned 2025 opening. And what Mumpower understands is that the local municipalities of Mason is going to profit from these taxes. Not just the jobs. See, a lot of times we get so involved in the jobs that can be brought to that town. Yes, that's going to help people with some high-tech jobs. I will tell those Black residents of Mason, Tennessee right now is stop everything you're doing and start to get certifications on electric cars, electric trucks, because those are the ones we'll be paying the most. Not only the assembly line, but those engineers. You should stop, drop. If you're in college, about to go to college, if you're 50, 60, you should find out some certifications that can get you involved in some of this money that will be generated by this Ford plant. That's the first thing you guys should be doing. Now, the city itself is going to be essentially whatever their tax codes and tax laws are going to be benefit from that. And Mumpower does not want that to happen. He wants that money to go to the state. He wants that money to go to his pocket and his cronies and his friends. But again, the town landed a 41-acre electric truck and battery plant that's going to bring in $1 billion in taxpayer incentives. The operation is expected to generate 27,000 new jobs and $22 million annually in state taxes after its planned 2025 opening. Let me go down a little bit. Listen to this though. Let me read something that's not highlighted. I think this is important. Mumpower's letter has infuriated Mason's part-time elected officials who insist they have no intentions of ceding their town's 153-year-old charter, which would subside the largely Black American majority Democratic community under the governance of Tipton County, which is predominantly white and Republican. You see that? You see how they're really being transparent in that not only is it white and Republican, Black neighborhoods and communities have been bulldozed, polluted, and abandoned for decades. Supposed promise of prosperity by city officials and politicians usually result only in gentrification or intrusive businesses at the expense of the culture that existed before them. For more than a century, the town of Mason was led by white elected officials. For more than a century, the town of Mason was led by white elected officials. That changed in 2016 when fraud and mismanagement allegations led to the resignation of nearly all city hall officials, all of whom were white. Can I read that again, family? Can I read that again? For more than a century, the town of Mason was led by white elected officials. That changed in 2016 when fraud and mismanagement of financials allegations led to the resignations of nearly all city hall officials, all of whom were white. Mason's current mayor, vice mayor, and 5 of its 6 aldermen are Black. Mumpower has offered, listen to this, the Comptroller of Tennessee, Mumpower has offered an ultimatum. He said, number one, either city officials decide to rescind his charter and give Tip-Top County power so we can allocate, so we can do whatever we want with these tax incentives and all these funds. And you know what, we're going to even go a step further. We're going to let Ford know that you have to allocate so many jobs to so many people. You're not going to just give all 1,600 or 27,000 jobs to Black people, even though it's only 1,600 people in Mason. And all of them should have a job, if not in that facility. He said either city officials decide to rescind his charter, bringing Mason under the authority of the Tipton County government, That's what he wants. Or number two, the comptroller's office will take full financial control. There it is, family. He wants full financial control, overseeing the town's budget with the authority to approve any expenditure over $100 or more. Are you freaking kidding me? This is what you call modern day financial slavery. You're going to have the structure inside your town. You're going to have the building. But when it comes to the finance, you can control the social economic, but when it comes to the financials, the accounting, we want to take full control of the budget. It states here, the second option is chosen. It will likely lead to budget and benefit cuts along with possible city government layoffs. Mundpower is equally prepared to act as he challenged the former President Trump, who once asked, what the hell do they have to lose when referring to black voters? Similarly, Mundpower asks, what are they holding on to? Mason's past, their present town leadership structure, and future investments are certainly enough for residents to hold on to, even in the face of modern colonization attempts. Modern colonization attempts. Family, what are they holding on to? They're holding on to a $1 billion taxpayer incentive. That is what the citizens and residents of Mason, Tennessee is holding on to, Mundpower. That is what they're holding on to. And the reason why you want them to rescind their charter or you take full financial benefit is from the very same reason why you ask them, what are they holding on to? Well, why do you want it? That's the real question. What are they holding on to? Why do you want it? Why do you want the charter? Why do you want to be rescinded? Why do you want to take full control of the financials and the budget? Why do you want to oversee these things? Why? Why is that? Because last time I checked, this town for a century was led by white elected officials. And then in 2016, after so much damn corruption, when fraud and mismanagement allegations led to the resignation of nearly all the city officials, all of whom were white, how can you essentially demonize the new mayor, vice mayor, and the aldermen who are all black? Can they get an opportunity to jack it up? Just like for the hundreds of years the previous white ones did? We know what this is about, family. This is about control. This is about power. And this is about money. This is why reparations are so damn important. Because it doesn't matter what we do or what we don't do. They continue to take, destroy. This goes against the very principle of some of the avenues that white supremacy takes of benign neglect. Oh, no. They're not benign neglecting this one. He was very public about this. I wonder what some of the new news stories are coming about, because now the town of Mason, Tennessee, are now trying to sue the state of Tennessee, because essentially the government should not allow this to happen. 2 square miles, family. That's all we have. Mason, Tennessee is only 2 square miles. Look at this town, family. You see the red outline? Let me give you a better depiction. That's how big Mason is. And they even trying to steal that. Reparations. Why are reparations so important? Yet again, I'm showing you, I'm telling you why reparations is so important, that this government, let me rephrase that these governments cut the check, pay us what they owe, because this whole bull crap of pulling ourselves up by our bootstrap simply does not work. Yeah, There's some prominent Black people who are doing very, very well. You have your onesies and twosies, but if you look back from our extensive history of doing financially and economically well and what occurred to these Black neighborhoods and communities, then you will understand why reparations is important. See, the thing about it today, family, is that we have so many people who do not understand history. And you don't need to read all the history. You can read little bits and pieces of history to kind of get a clearer picture of what occurred during those days to see the results of it today. And no, I'm not using it as an excuse of why majority of our family are doing bad today. But again, if you see a tree that is struggling to grow, you probably want to understand the environment in which it's growing. You probably want to understand how it's being nurtured. You probably want to understand what it's rooted in. That's what you probably want to understand. And then we have a lot of foreigners from all different types of countries coming to this land, looking down, speaking down, and against Black Americans and not even knowing the history. For some reason, we still have this stereotype of us being lazy. What? The Black American family are some of the hardest working people in the world. See, we don't like to bring up Rosewood. We don't like to bring up the other Black Wall Streets. We don't like to bring up Tulsa, Oklahoma. We don't like to bring up the summer, the red summer of 1919, where 25 race riots broke out. And they went city by city, destroying and killing Black people. They were destroying Black homes. Thousands of Black families were left homeless. No one wants to bring up history, right? Because that doesn't mean anything. But when you see a lot of prominent white people and you ask them how they got their wealth, you ask them how they got their money, and they will tell you, oh, we've had this land in our family for hundreds of years. We've had this trust in our family for hundreds of years. And it was passed down and passed down and passed down and passed down. Or they had land and sold the land and took the money and bought more land. Or they sold the land, took the money, built a business. This generation, Generation X, the millennials, and so forth, we are literally starting from scratch. Because our historical wealth was destroyed by Jim Crow, was destroyed by the Black Codes. See, the term Reconstruction meaning reconstructing what was lost. We didn't have Black Reconstruction really, because where it is today, reparations. That's why we needed family. Yeah, you're gonna have a couple of Black people that are gonna do fairly well. They landed a great job, they got some certification, they're doing right with their money. But for the majority, about 14.2% of our people, 13 to 14%, we know. Majority of our people are doing absolutely horrible, family. Living in the worst conditions, having the worst infrastructures around us. But here we go. Tennessee Comptroller Munpower is again trying to do social, economically, slavery and colonization of the majority Black town of Mason, Tennessee. Because he gave them two ultimatums. He said, either one, you rescind your charter, because we know there's a Black mayor, a Black vice mayor, and 5 to 6 Black aldermen that control the government in the 2 square mile city of Mason, Tennessee. But we want you to rescind the charter so Tip Top County can take control and I can have control. And if you don't do that, we're going to take full financial control of the Mason, Tennessee budget. So when Ford comes in, when it's $1 billion investment, we can allocate those taxes and incentives as we see fit. This is modern day financial slavery and colonization. And see, the only reason why it's important to point out massacres like Rosewood, the Red Summer of 1919, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and there's so many more. It's to show you how the system of white supremacy, no matter during the time, they just go with the day and age, they just go with the modern day times. During that time, they killed and destroyed Black people. They killed people, men, women, and children, destroy their homes, their businesses, their stores, their infrastructure. And in modern day, they just take your money. They just take your money. Or they prevent you from getting any money. Good morning, Mitchell Liggins. Nice to see you. That's all I have for today, family. You guys have a great and wonderful day. But again, the next time you have that discussion about reparations, don't be the one. If you don't believe that Foundation of Black American, those U.S. freedmen, deserve reparations or is owed, and I shouldn't use the word deserve, is owed reparations, then shut up. If you don't want reparations, just tell them, no, just give them out to somebody else. But don't speak out against your own family. Don't speak out against your own community. And don't speak out against money that is owed to those U.S. freedmen. You guys have a good one. I'm out.